You're taking a risk every time you click publish. Are people going to make fun of me? Will anybody read it? Am I going to be criticized? And so that risk taking kind of feels like you're holding your heart out to the world in the form of words. And it's a pulsing heart there. And you're like, please don't crush it. Please don't slash it.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I'm so glad you're here with me today for this conversation with my friend Anne Kroeker. Anne, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's such a joy. I'm so excited to get into our conversation today about the writing life. And before we do, I want people to know who you are because Anne is such a gift to me and to anyone in the writing world who is looking for support and encouragement. Anne is a writing coach. She's a published author, a professional speaker, and the host of the top 1% ranked Anne Kroeker Writing Coach podcast. She's supported hundreds of writers as they achieve their writing goals through her signature programs, membership, and one-on-one coaching. Anne designs her offerings for writers to improve their craft, pursue publishing, establish their online presence, and expand their reach so their message achieves maximum impact. And what an amazing list of things that you do to help writers. I'm so curious about how you got into this work in the first place.
Wow. I mean, you could go all the way back and start in childhood, but I won't do that to save your listeners some time. But it really is, I will say that it's this accumulation. It's sort of like the experiences that I've had in life kept accumulating. Journalist parents who were literary lovers. We were surrounded by books growing up. And so I was just in this literary setting. We talked about language. We did crossword puzzles. We played Scrabble. And so you grow up in an environment and words matter. Yeah. Language matters. Reading matters. My parents were both journalists. Newspapers were in front of me all the time. And so in that rich environment, then, as I began to explore what writing might look like for me, I studied it in college. I graduated with this creative writing degree, undergraduate, and then went on to start a freelance career. And then I kept trying new things, trying, exploring, experimenting until the world of blogging opened up. And so I started blogging, which was like a new thing when I started doing it. I had to explain to people what it was.
Right? Remember those days?
But what an opportunity that seemed like almost miraculous that you could click a button and be read by anybody in the world who wanted to read it. And it seems so ordinary now, but it was extraordinary at the time. And then in that world, in that sort of magical world of the startups of blogs, I got involved in an editorial team and then another editorial team that were kind of connected to each other. And in that setting, I was learning to help others craft their work, to be able to get their message across in the best way possible. And when I did that, I was editing their pieces, but while I did it, I did coach them. I didn't think of it as coaching. I didn't label it as coaching. We still called it editing. And I think a lot of editors experience this. Some editors focus only on the work, but some editors just naturally want to teach as they go. But meanwhile, I was also teaching composition and creative writing and literature to high school students. So all these things were converging to where there was a moment when one of my mentors said, I think you should be a writing coach. And it was new enough to the industry. I didn't know what it was. I had never heard of it. I mean, obviously it makes sense when you say a writing coach. Kind of like I can kind of imagine some possibilities there. And at the time, there were all kinds of writing coaches, like academics who were working toward their dissertations. People were doing that. There were a few book coaches. There were people helping with professional writing. And so I was trying to figure out what might that look like. And so I hung up my shingle at that time and worked networking within the group of people I was already in with that blogging and that editing world. Yeah. And then just through referrals and eventually people finding me on searches, I was able to reach even more people. So how did it start? I guess you could say that moment of the mentor saying you should be a writing coach, and I looked into it, and then I started. It literally started as a business. But I think I have been doing pieces of it all along. And that sort of knapsack of things I was collecting along the way, I think prepared me to have so many different skills. Like if I can help people with my background, coaching others or doing it myself, then I offer that. And if I feel like I'm not a good fit, I send them to another coach who is. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is bringing all of that and leveraging it to serve others.
Yes, which I am so grateful that I've been a personal recipient of your expertise and your coaching. And I think about when I first heard your name, actually, I don't know if you know this story. I think I've shared with you before that I was a member of a writing community online and your name was all over it. You were an active contributor to the online Facebook group and people would refer to you all the time as this expert. And truly, your name was so highly esteemed that I quickly started following you on all the socials and I subscribed to your newsletter, which I just have to say, if there's any aspiring writers out there, your newsletter is chock full of the most incredible, helpful resources. And so I was following you lurking, in the background for a long time, years before I finally reached out to you to work with you myself in my own writing journey. And I think about how vulnerable it felt and how much courage it felt for me to take that step and to say, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to invite someone else into this journey. And I wonder, how might a writer know, or how do the writers that you work with know that it's time for them to work with a writing coach?
It's a great question because people come for all different kinds of reasons. They are hitting some sort of block. It could be a creative block, or it could be a new phase of their journey, as with you. That's what happened to you. You knew you needed a certain thing, or you needed certain information to be able to take your next step, and you had been referred to me. Somebody referred you to me. People find their way, I think, to the coaches that make the most sense because they're looking for a solution to a problem, which is true of almost anything.
Sure.
We buy any book because we're looking for a solution to a problem, whether it's to be entertained or to have a problem solved. And so in this case, I started out really focusing on book proposals because a lot of people wanted to go the traditional path, and that is the most logical thing you're going to need. It's the business document that follows you, precedes you in all of the decision making that happens along the way with a literary agent, with an editor. So I focused on that first. And so if somebody knows that they need a book proposal and they see that I offer that, that would be one way people, so like one entry point. But then what they often hear along the path is they need to build a platform. And I realized about 5 years ago, people need help with this. They don't know what that could look like. So I formed a membership so it could be more agile and switch as times change and social media evolves. I could create content and trainings that can help people find their way forward with something that makes sense for their personality, to be able to build their online presence and be found by people with these messages that they have. And so the same impulse that has caused them to want to write a book, they can funnel that into showing up online, as you are doing right here in this podcast. And so I formed YPM, which is this membership, Your Platform Matters. And I kept kind of building on these different offerings just to serve people because I was hearing from them, this is what I need. And then of course, one-to-one, I can customize that for people. So I get people who are just wanting to improve their craft. And I have a strong background in that with my editing background and my teaching background. And so I can provide detailed input while I'm instructing them. But I also have a program that in the fall that comes out, a cohort-based thing. But these are the ways that I think the biggest need, they look to see, can she offer that? So they might reach out for one-to-one coaching, but then find out that maybe one of the programs is a better fit. So I think anybody who's like, I have a specific need here. Can Ann Kroeker or anybody else meet this? Is one way a person might end up with me or another coach. Yeah. But they also might just be like, I want to write. I don't know what to do. Like this, I don't really know what to do at all. And so they just start reaching out to people and say, like, how do you start writing poetry? How do you start submitting to literary magazines? How do you build a freelance business? How can I get better in my writing at work so I get a little more respect when I'm interacting with people? Or, of course, the professional paths we're talking about.
Right. You're naming all of these different spheres in which people might write and might want to improve their craft of writing. But you started talking about those writers who want to enter the publishing world, specifically the traditional publishing world, where you do need a book proposal, as you mentioned, the business document that a lot of people aren't as familiar with the book publishing process. I know I shared before we started recording, I've talked a little bit about this on another episode, but that whole overwhelming book publishing process for someone who's not already a part of the industry can be so intimidating and so difficult to navigate. And so that was how we connected initially. Is I had been practicing writing a lot of words that I never shared with anyone, but for years I had been practicing blogging and slowly writing a little bit more in short form on social media. I started writing email newsletters, but I always knew in the back of my mind there was a book, and I knew that I needed to write my story. And I had years before joined a writing mastermind group that helped me develop some of those stories and had really encouraged me in the craft of writing in ways that I'd never taken a writing course in college. How did I make it through a master's degree without ever taking a writing course? But I reached the point where I knew it was time to write the book, but I felt so overwhelmed and so intimidated by the process, and I lacked so much confidence. And so for me, I reached out to you because I knew I needed not just a guide to help me through the logistics of writing a book proposal, which I legitimately needed, but also I needed a cheerleader. I needed someone to look at me and say, Jillian, your idea is good. This message matters and people need it. And from our very first conversation, that's what you said to me. And I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until the words came out of your mouth. And I probably was crying in our first meeting. I don't know. No, there have been many tears throughout our conversations because it's such a vulnerable thing, right? To bring yourself, to offer a message to the world. And so I'd love to hear you talk about that vulnerability piece and that cheerleading / encouragement / confidence building piece. Why do writers, or really any of us trying to bring something creative or beautiful into the world, why do we need a champion like you or anyone else?
There are so few writers I've ever met who truly feel invincible, confident. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. And they just write it and send it out. Those people are few and far between. And most people that I'm interacting with are, just as you say, hesitant, nervous. And sometimes it even feels like you're kind of, depending on the type of writing you're doing, but really any kind of risk taking that takes place as in this whole journey, even if you're self-publishing or even if you're focusing only on online writing, you're taking a risk every time you click publish. Are people going to make fun of me? Will anybody read it? Am I going to be criticized? And so that risk taking kind of feels like you're holding your heart out to the world in the form of words. And it's a pulsing heart there. And you're like, please don't crush it. Please don't slash it. And I don't think people, even the writer themselves, they don't quite realize that's what's happening, but that's what it feels like. And I think there are very few other areas of work and craft where it feels so vulnerable because we are truly expressing this combination of mind and heart and putting it on the page and sharing it with the world. When we take that extra risk to not just leave it in our diaries or journals, and we share it with the world, that's a huge risk. So I think to feel like people come to me sometimes to say, is my writing any good? And like, what an interesting question. They don't want to know, tell me about the message. Did that strike you? They were like, is my writing any good? Well, maybe they want to work on craft. That's fine. But is it possible that their little heart is there pulsing on the page? I think that is how so many of us feel. And that's why the cheerleading can help. An honest review, but done with love, can really help us see honestly where we're at so we can get better. And that can grow confidence because we know where we're strong. We know where we can improve or how we can improve our writing. Because I don't lie to people. If I feel like their writing could improve, I show them where and how so that they can feel like, oh, I see what you're saying. I'm making the same little repetition here. I need to work on that. I do that a lot, don't I? And we have fun with that. And so I think if you have somebody who has a heart for you and is working with you with that, so you feel safe, that can help a lot. Another reason why I think a lot of people need a champion and a cheerleader is so many of us have been shut down by the red pen of an English teacher, a parent, some boss, some sort of critical person who just struck down and crossed out and just told you all of the bad things you did as a writer. I told you you were no good. So that's always ringing in your head, this inner critic that becomes you. Like you absorb it and you say it to yourself. Voices echoing from the past sometimes that haunting you and telling you can't do it. And so people come to me sometimes in their 60s, 70s, and they're like, I'm too scared to write, because of something that happened when they were a teen. And so of course you're going to need somebody to be there, coaching you and encouraging you.
I love that you said that. Of course you're going to need someone. Of course you are. There's no shame in needing support, right? And as a coach myself, I believe wholeheartedly in the reality that every single one of us needs someone in our corner, no matter what the work is or what the journey is.
Yeah.
We all need someone in our corner telling us, you can do this. Yes, your voice matters. Yes, your life matters. Yes, what you're offering the world is needed and it's valuable. Who you are, fully yourself, you're worth showing up. And I think about those experiences of shame, really, what you're describing, that so many of us, I can't remember the percentage, but it's like most of us have some sort of an experience in our educational journey where we've experienced shame in some way, that it really does stick with us and form a belief about ourselves and our ability that has to be undone in relationship with someone else, because shame is a relational experience. It's the belief, the feeling that something about us makes us unworthy of love and belonging and relationship. And so it's really a fear of rejection. And so the reality is that shame has to be healed in relationship, right? We have to have experiences with people who tell us a truer, kinder story about ourselves and what we have. So I love that that's what you're offering people in the writing world, because of course, this vulnerable, important work, when we have a message to share, shame is going to get bigger and louder because the risk is so big. And so we need someone like you or other writers to be in it with us, reminding us to keep going when rejection inevitably comes, because it will.
And that's what I was going to say. I'm so glad you finished that thought too, though, that idea that the shame needs to heal so that we can be prepared for it. Being in the writing world. If you are going to try to pursue any traditional path, whether with short form, you're going to submit to literary magazines or guest posts, or you're going to try to submit an article to a magazine, you have to be prepared. You probably will hear no. Especially in your first attempts, you're probably going to hear no from at least one person. That doesn't mean no forever, even for that one piece, whatever that project is, even if it's as large as a book. But you're going to hear no, and you have to get used to hearing no. And if you have those voices you have not healed, it can feel like that slashing of the heart every single time. And you just want to just forget it after the first one. But to be successful at this, we do have to find our way forward and be willing to take that risk again and again and again to hear the yes one day, or find a new way to repackage the idea or whatever that might look like. And that's where, again, having somebody creative who has some experience in the field, it doesn't have to be me. And any coach who's got that experience can help you start sorting it through and then saying, is there a different action we need to take here? Or is it just a matter of moving to the next person to try it again? And to do that while you're feeling scared and sad and upset and questioning yourself and why am I even trying? All of that. That's a lot to do when all you wanted to do was get a book out there. You had a book idea. You were so excited. You had this book idea. Now I'm dealing with my existential dread or whatever.
Totally.
It's quite a journey.
And the real boundaries and limitations and challenges within the writing world, right? Not only our internal obstacles that we're facing, but these external realities that, there are only so many books that publishers can, pay to be published every year. And there's so much competition. There's so much competition among agents. Where they have to be able to guarantee that they're going to be able to sell your book idea to a publishing house before they sign you. And that means that you have to have a huge platform, which, I love that you have that support. Your platform matters for people who want to build their platform, but it can be really discouraging and defeating for someone who has a message to share and just wants to write the book, which is hard enough work as it is. It can be so discouraging to realize, I now need to spend so much time and energy building a social media presence, building an email newsletter to try to prove to editors and agents that I have a platform. People want to listen to me. They're going to buy my books. There's so many obstacles that would keep writers from doing the work. And so, of course, we need people in our corner, coaches, writing friends, writing community to help us keep going.
Yeah. And you just listed a lot of things that you don't have to have a writing coach. Maybe your funds are limited. You can form a group of people who are your writing friends, writing buddies. You could have just one writing buddy. You could go to a writing event at your library. There are lots of ways to connect and build that community and that network of support. So it doesn't always have to be a coach, even though, of course, I believe that one-to-one interaction can be so valuable. Or even like a group coaching that I do in the membership. Like it's fun. We have fun with it.
Yeah.
But, I touched on all the things we have to do to build a platform and how frustrating that can be for so many people. But I think I've heard from you that you're having some fun with this podcast.
I am having fun, Anne. I am.
So building a platform could be even fun sometimes.
Okay, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because there is a that obstacle, that mental barrier, that mindset shift that needs to happen. And that's what you have been so helpful for me. One, normalizing the process, normalizing the rejection, normalizing the challenges and struggles so that I know it's not just me that's struggling. Like this is a normal part of the process and we have to develop some grit and perseverance to keep going. So normalizing it helps. But two, you've helped me shift my mindset to realize it's not about the work. It's about the message. And if my message is really about helping, which you've helped me even refine the message in our conversations. I didn't know. I came to you and I was like, I want to write a book about all these things. And you're like, okay, that's really big and not really clear. You said it much kinder than that, but you helped me formulate, okay, what is important? What is it that you really want people to know? And it was in our conversations as I was talking about really wanting to help people defeat shame and build self-compassion to quiet the voice of shame. And you and I were talking about just this practice of gentleness. And I can't remember. I think I had maybe been working out and had this idea right before I came to a call with you. And I said, I don't know, Anne, it's just something about the gentle way. And you said, oh, that's it, the gentle way. That's it. And then we went back and forth and you helped me even clarify that concept even more to come up with an acronym to help people understand how to practice the gentle way. And your work, your support and our conversations were so pivotal in clarifying the message. But back to the mindset, you have reminded me that not only do I need clarity in the message itself, but the message is for the people that I want to serve. It's not because of something that I'm trying to promote for myself. I'm not trying to build a platform because I think I'm so great or I want people to see me or I want to be famous. Goodness, no, please. No, I have prayed often, God, protect me from fame. But because there are people that need to know that they're allowed to be gentle with themselves. There are people that need to know that shame is a liar and that voice isn't the one that they need to listen to. And it's the message of hope and self-compassion and honestly, the kindness of God toward others that I want them to know. And that is motivating and also life-giving and fun. Like you said, to do this work and to experiment with a podcast that you suggested first, actually, that I start. Thank you for that. It's life-giving and it's energizing because I care so much about the message and I care so much about the people that I imagine on the other side listening to these words or reading the words. So yeah, that shift of moving from the work and the obstacles to the message and the audience has been immensely helpful.
That shift for me happened when I was in a conversation with a literary agent. At the time, he was an editor, and we were sitting around having a lunch. I guess it was lunch, and he was asking me. And this is before my very first book came out. They were still kind of considering whether they would acquire the book, even. And he said, do you speak? And I'm thinking, not really. At the time, I had very little experience. But I knew, of course, the answer is yes. And so I had to figure out how to phrase this. And I knew I had friends who could help me if I needed to learn to be a speaker. That I had friends who would gladly explain how to organize myself and get practice. They might even give me an opportunity. So I said, well, I don't now, but I would be willing to learn. And then he said, if you can start to think of the same impulse that caused you to want to write down this idea in book form, what if you just use that same message and thought about all the other ways that you can reach people, including speaking? I'm paraphrasing from memory, but that is the same shift you had that we're talking about here, where it's a message that I'm shepherding. I'm an ambassador of this message, if you will, and all the ways I can reach people, including a book one day. That would be amazing. But what if I also help them through a newsletter? What if I also share them bit by bit on social media? Like all these things are available to us. Like I mentioned at the beginning here that blogging was new and amazing to me back in the, like that was amazing. Like I click a button and I could reach the world. I was like,
crazy.
What? Like I was getting books in the library and now I can do this click and I could read other people's work. And so we have all these tools available to us. Yes, they have their problems. Like they have issues and some people don't want to touch them. And I get that. And I respect that. And if you're off of all of that and you're using other methods, that's where we get really creative in YPM and think of all the different ways that we can reach people. It's not just social media. So if you start thinking about that, what are all the ways I can shepherd this message and share it with people because I feel so passionate about it. I wanted to write a whole book about it. What are the other ways I can do this? Because if you self-publish, you can speed up the timeline for your book to come out into the world. But if you go the traditional path, the average amount of time it takes, they say, from the signing of a contract with a publishing house to when your book is released into the world is on average 1.5 to 2 years. So if you aren't even there yet, if you don't even have a literary agent or, you're just starting the process of developing your book proposal, that's even longer.
Right.
It's just adding up all the different milestones you're going to have to meet along the way. So if we had to wait, we have the idea. We're so excited about this message. And we have to wait 2 years before we get to share it with anybody. And we don't really know. We hope it's going to change their lives and help them. But what if we stop thinking about platform as a thing that we need to be able to land a deal and start thinking about it all the ways that we could be sharing this message now and giving people transformation now, offer them hope now, whatever your message is. To me, that's a way of reframing it, is that we don't have to wait until our book is out to be sharing the heart behind it and some of the ideas in it. Of course, you don't want to share your whole book in different ways, but just like to be able to get those ideas out like you are doing episode by episode right here in this podcast. I think that is just the gift that we get with all of this technology and all these opportunities. The other thing I was thinking about, you were talking about how that feeling of rejection, this is like a totally different topic, but you were talking about the feeling that we have to go through sometimes it brings up shame when we are dealing with rejection or all kinds of feelings. It conjures up many, many feelings that are complicated. One of my clients, I normally never reveal my clients unless they have revealed to others that I've worked with them. So I will call this person by name. Her name is Deepa Maturi. She's one of my clients from the past. We worked together on a lot of different things. And along the way, she was wanting to submit to literary magazines and literary journals. And you hear no a lot with that too, because again, limited space, they only take a few and they are often inundated. And so you hear no a lot. She says, Anne, this is so painful. How can I process this? And I said, well, I was just reading about how back in the day, we would get physical copies of our rejection letters. They would get usually a form letter. I was just reading, it's on my shelf back there, Stephen King, and how he would like put them on a nail in the attic where he was working in it till the nail like was so heavy it broke. And
oh my gosh, I love that.
Whatever. Anyway, and then I had read another thing about somebody saying how they would, when they were angry, they would like take nails and bang them into a piece of wood until all those nails would then be all the rejections. Well, she's a very, very soft-hearted person. And she said, I don't think the nails is going to work for me, but I'm going to think about it. And then she got back with me and she's written a beautiful piece about it too. But she says, now I went to like a craft store where I could get this bag of beautiful pearlescent beads. And then I got a beautiful container that I could put them in. And every time I get a rejection, I take one of the pearls and I put them into the container. And as they have accumulated, she has quite a few in the bowl now, she says. But as she fills up that, she says, I am trusting that something beautiful is happening within me and forming me into something more beautiful. That this process of processing and accepting the rejection is changing me for better and not for the pain behind it, or that the pain can be used for good.
What a powerful illustration.
Yes. And I tell people and I pass it along here, and go follow Deepa Maturi. She's coming out with a book this year. And so, yes, it is bearing fruit. And I can see that in all the things that she has tried. And she has landed many, many, many essays and award-winning essays in literary magazines. So she did get yeses along the way. She just had to endure the no, but she turned the endurance into something beautiful.
Yeah. Well, which makes me think of the first rejection that I got from my book proposal that you helped me create. We spent several months together over last summer working on this book proposal, and it was an arduous process. I put hours and hours and my heart and soul into it. And I I don't think that I had ever submitted something and gotten rejected until I had sent my book proposal out, because I hadn't been brave enough to submit things, Anne, until you stepped into this work with me. And so I finally finished my book proposal, which was, I don't know, like 60 something pages. Like, it's a huge document and includes, an introduction and 2 sample chapters. So that's part of the length, but I submitted it to several agents, and you'd helped me kind of find some of those agents. And I remember submitting to someone online. It was a cold submission. I had no connection with this person, and getting the rejection email back, like, it was within 24 hours. It was a very quick rejection. But I remember sharing that with you. Like, look, I'm finally a writer. I'm a real writer now. I've finally been rejected. Now I'm that much closer. And I think you said that to me. You're that much closer to the acceptance. That's right. You're that much closer to a yes. But I couldn't have reframed rejection on my own, because I would have been stuck in the shame of, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So for you to help me in that space, and again, shame is healed in relationship, right? For me to feel that sense of someone doesn't want me, but then for you to celebrate that with me and normalize it, it melted the shame, Anne. And it's so powerful. So I'm wondering, what advice would you give to writers, no matter where they are in the journey, and maybe more for those of us who are on the more beginning end, as we try to kind of bravely put ourselves out there, knowing that rejection is going to come? What would you suggest for us to stay encouraged and to stay in the game when, it doesn't ever feel good to hear that no. So when that pain comes, or, shame kind of gets large inside our bodies, what encouragement would you give us?
This is probably not the best picture to have in your head for the softest people, but there's a famous speech from Teddy Roosevelt where he talks about being in the arena, getting dusty. You're in there. That's what I tell people. You're in the game. If you can kind of visualize it. Yes, now I'm in the arena doing the work. It is really easy to avoid rejection if you never submit, which is the story you just told. So if you can start to see yourself as whatever comes to mind as a visual for you, that, I'm brandishing my sword as a knight, and I'm off to fight for the good causes, or that all I can think of are like all these Teddy Roosevelt pictures, boxing and things like that. But like that's this act, you're actively saying, like, I'm getting out there, I'm going to get a little dirty, but that means I'm in the game. That means I'm willing to be a writer who submits. Because you can be a writer and never submit. It can be personal writing, and which is a beautiful way to process. And I believe that both kinds of writing are essential for any writer to grow in both their craft and in their self, in their sense of self, so that they can process their rejections even in their personal writing that never sees the light of day. So I think that kind of writing is rich and vital to a healthy writer. But if you decide, I have some of the messages in my heart that I want to share with the world, then you have to be willing to try to take that risk. But that said, I think we can do a lot where we do share in spaces that we control, and we don't have to wait for the gatekeeper. Now you've eliminated one no. You can say yes to yourself. I'm going to green light myself. And I think that is also a very empowering thing in this day and age. That's where if I have a blog and I publish a blog post, you can call it an article, you can call it whatever you want, but like something within my control to be I can publish myself. I'm saying yes to me because I think this is good. I think this message is needed. So I'm going to say yes to myself and get it out there. And if you do that over and over again, now you're getting this sense of empowerment. Like, I'm in control. Nobody else can tell me no. I'm sitting at the table, and if I were facing a publisher an editor that's going to say no to me, I'm the one who gets to say no, and I'm going to say yes to myself. Yeah. The more you do that, you're gifting yourself then that sense of green lighting yourself, but also you're getting experience writing, which is just going to help. It's going to make you better over time. Absolutely. And then if you do, in the middle of all that, then you have a group of people, whether that's one writing buddy, one writing coach, a group of people, maybe all three, a community of some sort of writers where you can process these things. We all are experiencing this. I submitted something to a literary journal, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago, got a rejection. So it happens to all of us if we try. Yeah. And so if we share the rejection, we all let that person cry, get angry, say they don't know what they're talking about, or whatever they need to do to process it. Give yourself a day to feel sad for yourself, feel sorry for yourself, but then put it into it and then get back to sending that out to somebody else. I think those are all things we can do to move through all the emotions, all the feelings, and then keep going forward, keep writing.
Yeah.
And if you get the no, go publish something yourself. If you get the rejection, put something up on social media just for you, knowing I'm going to share a little something with the world. Because I got said no over here, I'm going to say yes to myself and share it over here. These are practical things that any of us can do to start really feeling great about what we have to share with the world.
I love that you said it happens to all of us if we try. Any of us who try, any of us who have committed to live our life in the arena. I love that you brought up the Teddy Roosevelt speech, which is actually the basis for Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. That idea that I'd rather be in the arena with my face marred with sweat and dirt and tears than in the stands watching and criticizing. It's easy, like you said, to be in the stands.
Right.
I want to live my life in the arena. And that's going to involve a lot of dirt and mud and rejection at times. And also I'd rather live courageously and dare greatly. And so the other thing that strikes me is you mentioned several times this idea of having community with our writing coach and also ideally writing friends. And I didn't quite believe you when you told me this initially, Anne, that if I went to a writing conference, I could meet some of my closest writing friends. I didn't actually think that was possible because I'm an introvert and I didn't really think I'd be that, outgoing when I was in a group of strangers. But you were absolutely right. And Jenny and Michelle have become some of I feel teary thinking about how deeply meaningful those relationships have become. We met last year at the same writing conference that you and I connected at the Write to Publish conference in June in Chicago. And since then, we Marco Polo multiple times a week. We cheer each other on. We meet each other, for one-on-one coaching. We pray for each other. We support each other in all sorts of practical ways. They were my first podcast guests. And it has been life-changing to have people in the arena with me, linking arms, saying, we'll do it together. We'll celebrate together. We'll cry together. We'll persevere together. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that idea of community.
Oh, yes. And I'm so glad you found it. And it was easier than you thought. I mean, I remember when we were just sitting around a table and we started up a conversation.
Yeah.
Who knew that would move forward? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But one of the very first writing conferences I ever went to, it was actually the first event I went to. It's called Write to Publish, and it's the same one that you and I went to, but a long time later. The person who was the keynote speaker, it wasn't even the organizer of the place, it was the keynote speaker, just broke us into groups by region. And that was where I found and formed my first writing group, was from a writing conference where it was a little more organized effort was made. So that's just one place, I think, to find it. I already listed a few other places you could find in your own community. And there are online ones too. I know there are several places where you can go for either free, or some of them do have a membership fee where you can write with others. And it's literally the time you will sit down and everybody will go around, and maybe depending on how they organize it, you'll say your name and a little update about your writing life and this is what I'm going to work on today. Or if it's a huge group, you're not going to be able to do that. But then everybody mutes. It's all digital. We're all on Zoom or something. You mute and then you work for the hour or whatever the time is together. It's less interactive, but also feels really great to look up and see all those writers on that screen who are also working on their work. And again, you feel less alone while you're doing the work. We no longer, we had this picture of people holding themselves up in an attic, like Madeleine L'Engle in her Crosswick's secret writing place. And a lot of writers still do. And the actual writing does happen, on a page, or us, I guess we could be verbalizing it onto a voice memo and then having that transcribed. There's more than one way to get our words out. But when we are writing, it is just us and the page, but it actually doesn't have to be alone ever again. It really doesn't.
That's such a powerful reminder, is that we don't have to do this work alone. And in fact, I believe if we're going to stay in it over the long haul, we can't do it alone. So, and this is so enriching. And it just reminds me again of how grateful I am for our relationship and the role that you've played in my life, encouraging me to keep going. And I am truly doing this podcasting work and continuing to do writing work, much less work on the book anymore. For now, I believe this is part of the work, right? But I'm continuing in that writing journey because of the work we've done together. So just forever grateful for you.
Great.
And as we're wrapping up here, I'm wondering, is there any sort of permission slip that you would want to give to listeners?
Well, if I were meeting with somebody, it would be personalized to what their needs are.
Sure.
So if somebody's never written before, your permission slip is you have permission to sit down and write privately anything you want. literally anything you want. Nobody's going to read it. Write freely. It was one of the most liberating things I experienced in college was the book Writing Down the Bones. And
Yes.
that book was just talking about free writing, which was like a new concept. You write down, it's not new at all now, but we just set a timer, you write without stopping, and you if you don't know what to say, you actually just write, I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. But what I really want to say is, and somehow if you get this practice going, you can go deeper and get to the things you really want to say. You get past that inner editor and you start to get down to the heart places that are the hard places that we want to put into words, but we're scared to put into words. And that's where some really powerful writing can come. It doesn't have to ever see the light of day. Nobody needs to read it. But you have permission to do that work so you can start to become the person who can then, if you want to, write publicly. And those who want to write publicly, you have permission to click publish, greenlight yourself, thumbs up to you. You can be your own publisher, short form, long form, whatever you want to do. It's an amazing world out there where you can say yes to you. So you have permission to write and share with the world the message that's on your heart. And don't be too scared to do that, and surround yourself with people who will say, yeah, I'll read it ahead of time, give you some thoughts, and then get your work out there.
I'm receiving that permission for myself, Anne. Thank you. Thanks for being here and for this conversation. It's been a gift.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Permission Slips. I hope you have been inspired to explore what writing might look like in your own life, whether for your own healing journey and insight or for publishing on some level with others. Remember, your life matters, and so do your words, more than you know.